The next set of questions that we will work on are questions 19 through 21, and the directions simply say simplify. We're given a number of expressions using decimals, fractions, multiplying, dividing, adding, subtracting, so we really have to be careful to make sure we keep track of all of our integer rules so that we're not making any mistakes. Our first problem, number 19, we have a negative 0.4 and a positive 5.62. And all that we're dealing with are positive and negative numbers, and we're adding the two together. So here we simply need to recognize that we have a negative term and a positive term. We find the difference and keep the sign of the larger absolute value number. Our largest absolute value number is obviously 5.62, so our solution when we're done is going to be positive. And then we just need to find the difference between those two numbers, 5.62 and 0.4. And we're finding the difference. Excuse my cough. 2, 6 minus 4 is also 2. Bring the 5 down. So our solution is 5.2, and we said it was going to be positive, so positive 5.22. Problem number 20. We start to get a little bit more going on in this problem. First thing I notice is that I have a minus and negative happening right smack in the middle, and I'm going to go ahead and circle that. Again, I circle it just so that I can still see the signs, but I remind myself that something different is going on. Minus and negative happens to become a positive. And then since I have multiple terms, I'm going to go ahead and make myself a T-chart just so I can keep track of what terms I'm using. So I have a positive 63.45. My expression led off with a negative 15.3, and it concluded with a negative 12.8. So obviously we're going to find the difference between these two columns because we have numbers in both the positive column and the negative column. But in order to simplify things, I'm going to go ahead and get a total for each column. My total for my positive column is obviously 63.45. And my total for my negative column requires me to add these two together. So 8 and 3 is 11. Carry the 1. 5 and 2 is 7, plus 1 is 8. And then 1 and 1 is 2. So the total for my negative column is negative 28.10. And again, just like problem 1, now I have a term that is positive and a term that is negative, and I can even rewrite this equation now, or this expression, using just these two values. I get 63.45 plus negative 28.1. And so now we're looking for the difference between the two numbers. Keep the sign of the larger absolute value number. The largest absolute value number is 63.45. So my solution when I'm done is going to be positive. And I need to find the difference between these two numbers. 63.45 and 28.1. I'm going to add a 0 just so that I have the same number of decimals because that makes adding and subtracting decimals a little bit more simple in my mind. 5 minus 0 is 5. 4 minus 1 is 3. 3, you cannot take 8 away from it, so I need to borrow 1 from the next column. 13 minus 8 is 5. And then 5 minus 2 is 3. We already said our solution was going to be positive, so I'll come down next to my positive sign and say positive 35.35 is my solution. Now problem number 21. Again, just like we practice in class, I like to look at the numbers and say, okay, what am I dealing with? I have a parenthesis next to a parenthesis, so that means I'm multiplying two numbers. Both numbers are negative, so that means its eventual solution for just my pair of multiplied numbers will be positive. And so now we need to multiply two decimals. 2.5 times 4.3. 5 times 3 is 15. Carry the 1. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Bring down a 0 so we can start the next number. 4 times 5 is 20. Carry the 2. I'm going to cross out my 1 so I don't accidentally use it instead of the 2. 4 times 2 is 8, plus 2 is 10. Now I add my middle section here, 5, 7, 0, 1. And our last step is to look at our original problem and find out how many decimal places were in it. I have one number to the right of this decimal and one number to the right of that decimal, so that's 2. Starting from the end here, I need to move over 2 decimal places. So 10.75. So the combination of negative 2.5 times negative 4.3 equals 10.75 positive. So now we can say 10.75 plus negative 6.3. And again, we're just doing an adding and subtracting problem to finish this one up. So it's very much like 19 and 20. I need to find the difference between the two numbers, keep the sign of the larger absolute value number. And in this case, 10 is definitely larger than 6. So my final solution for this problem will also be positive. And I just need to find the difference between the two numbers. So 5 minus 0 is 5, 7 minus 3 is 4. Can't subtract 6 from 0, so I'm going to borrow that 1 on the end. 10 minus 6 is 4. And if you didn't need to cross out that 10 because you can recognize what's going to happen and go ahead and subtract it, that's fine too. But I just try to be consistent in how we work across adding and subtracting. So my final solution is 4.45.